Welcome back to the channel. Today we're back in the shop until we finish this thing, which won't be today, but we'll get pretty close. Today we're installing the new front end kit, and it is a older Cage Kits front end kit. You might also know that company by the owner, Wheelchair Slayer. This kit I bought off of TJ for about 800 bucks. I just looked online to see what they are now, and I think they're like 1,200 bucks for these kits. I got this one way back in the day, and I'm not gonna add it to the cost of the build, just so we can get kind of a general price of what it'll cost you guys to build one of these. Hopefully yours will come with a front end. This car never had a front end when I had it, so we have to put one on, kinda. So I'm not gonna add it to the total cost, but it will be on the car, so it's gonna be me cheating just a little bit. But let me grab the kit, show you what we're working with. I think you'll like this. So this is the Cage Kit front end. I would say this is the headlight bracket and fender mount. There are two options you can get from the website. There is a TIG welded kit or a MIG welded kit. This is the MIG welded kit, and it retails for like $12.50 right now. I got this for 800 bucks from TJ, and I didn't realize that they're that expensive now. First, we're gonna get the shock tower mounts cut up and mounted so that we can get everything else kind of aligned, and then we will chop the front frame rails and get this thing installed. So with this kit, you'll get the left and right fender and headlight assemblies. You'll get the front hood latch, the lower radiator support. You'll have both left and right shock tower mounting plates, the two front frame rail box ends with all the hardware. You could tell just by looking at this kit that it is actually very well thought out. There is a little bit of adjustability in most of the mounting points so that they'll fit on your car. As you and I know, none of these 240s are straight, and I don't think this car is the exception, so that is actually going to help with the mounting and the fitting of the fenders and the headlights eventually. Not saying this car is going to have fenders on it, but eventually it might. So you're going to start with the shock tower mounts. What we'll need to do is chop some of the material off of the shock towers so that the rib nuts have somewhere to go, so this can mount flush to the shock tower itself. Then we'll move on to putting the front headlight and fender assemblies on, and that'll line us up to put the box ends on the front of the frame rails. Once we have all that mocked up, then we can start getting the radiator kind of placed in there and see where things line up, and then it's all adjustable to a certain extent. We'll just make sure we measure a couple times before we weld things on. When I bought this car, there was no front end on it. I didn't cut this off, and I don't know if they ever ran the car like this or if someone kind of just gave up halfway through, you know, tubbing the front end or whatever they were going to do. So there is still the seam here that's going to need to get cut off. This needs to actually sit flush with the front of this shock tower. So you can see it lines up, but we're going to need to basically cut this flush just a little bit more. Cut this flush with the shock tower, and I'll leave as much of it as I can so that I can keep some rigidity in the upper mount of the shock tower. It's a 240. It's going to flex a little bit unless we get a cross brace across the front of the shock towers, which we probably should since there is so much material that is gone. And the front cage kit, I don't see it bringing too much rigidity back to the car other than, you know, stabilizing the radiator and intercooler, which is all we really need at this point. We may end up building a bash bar later down the road, but for now, getting this thing installed, getting the radiator on, getting it running so I can name it, because it still needs a name. Makes you wonder how much these things flex when you drive them. It's got to be significant. There's just nothing here. Oh wow. Make sure it's flush, tack it on. We'll tack on the other side, and then we'll start building it and making sure it's right, because I mean you don't want to that up, right? And you really want to put some weldable primer on that. So we got both sides tacked on. I'm gonna get the brackets bolted up so we can kind of see where the front lines up here. These boxed ends mount to the top right here on top of the frame rail. And they also mount the lower rad support. Now that we know kind of where our points are, we have to cut these frame rails because one side's open, so we have to retain the back side and then basically chop off the front. These are probably 1/8 inch, where these were 16th. No, they're like 14 gauge, probably. I don't know what the wall thickness on the kit is, but it's probably pretty light. It'll definitely do the job. Definitely needs a bash bar though, because if I bend this, or if Megan bends this, I'm gonna be upset. We can basically cut all of this out so that this fits well. You don't really want to have metal to metal faces because the water can get trapped in there and then you get rust and stuff like that. So that goes in like this, and it actually fits well. And this clips on the outer side of the rail, so the back side of the plate stays, the front of this gets cut out, and I can actually cut the bottom off too. And we can use the corner of this pinch weld to weld to, and I'm hoping that I can retain this factory toe point because I don't want to cut that off. That would suck. All right. Wow, those are really nice. That is nice. Oh, damn. We'll cut the other side, we'll get it mounted, and then we will attach everything together, get it set in place, make sure it's level, and then we'll finish weld everything. I don't have fenders to test fit the fitment on the shock tower to fender transition, but I don't think they actually don't have tabs for the fenders. I think you have to fabricate your own tabs. So good thing we're not running any. Nice. So everything's lined up with the fender bracket. So I'm going to level the front to the rail. I don't know if it's level, but we're just gonna put the bubble in the same location from when it's here to here. It's not square, come on. Oh wow, and it lines up perfect. Now we're going to repeat the process for that side. Get everything mocked up again. Finish weld some of it with the brackets in place. And then we'll take everything off. Finish weld the plates. Put it back together. Move on to the radiator and intercooler. Hopefully I have enough intercooler piping to make it work. I still need to order the blow-off valve and a weldable flange so we can weld it onto the IC piping. And then, I mean, we're pretty much there. I think the next video will probably be the ECU wiring brakes, because I have to finish those still, because we didn't finish them in the last video. Basically, just the harmonic balancer, pulleys, fan, and, you know, we're almost running. So everything's tacked in, everything's level. I used an 8-foot level to get overall levelness between frame rail and frame rail. I mean, doesn't get much better than that, right? Now we're gonna bolt it together. Hopefully everything's still in the right place. That one's a bit crooked because the weld is too big, my tack weld. So we'll grind that tack weld, weld it, and then come back and kind of grind the weld away just a little bit so that that foot can get kicked out right here. Other than that, it looks great. Lower rad support. And this is actually going to pull these two frame rails together. I might tighten this up and then weld everything so it kind of keeps that form, and then it should fit a little bit better. Again, these things, I mean, they're not that square. got it all finished welded. The towers are actually pretty difficult. It's varying thicknesses on the metal, so you kind of have to gauge your amperage on the welder. Let's throw the kit back on and get it bolted down. I may need to grind the welds out of the corner here because the bracket needs to sit pretty far over for it to line up with the holes properly. Still lines up, so that's good. If you're new to the channel, that engine's out of a 92 Nissan D21. I'll link that video right here so you can see where it came from. You can see I put the radiator from the D21 that the engine came out of. I took everything from that truck. The transmission, the engine, intake, power steering pump, radiator. Basically everything in this car is from a Nissan D21. We're gonna go pick up some metal so I can make a new mount for the front intercooler. And what that is a cheapo eBay intercooler, and it's good for probably, I don't know, 200 horsepower or something like that. So what we're gonna do is build us a bracket to hold this right here, and then we're gonna get the plumbing kind of roughed in for the intercooler so I can see where things go. We may need to chop some more metal out to make the IC piping fit past these transitions right here. The only thing is this radiator is way too tall, as you can see, for the 240 chassis. I might end up leaning it forward like this so we could actually utilize this radiator with the hood, which we don't have. I mean, we don't have a hood yet, so this is gonna be in here no matter what. And we may just fab up some temporary mounts that go right here so that we can get everything in and get the car running, get it tuned, and then we can come back and change some things that we wanna make look a little bit better. But in my mind, if it rips, we're good. Not very square, are they? Well, I guess those two. I don't think I'm gonna need that one. I'll just utilize these two. 21 inches. We got the L metal mounted. Gonna get the intercooler on here. Cutest damn intercooler you've ever seen. I have this box of intercooler piping I've had for the past 8 years probably, and I think I have enough to piece together most of it. I might need a couple of couplings because the turbo outlet's pretty small. I need the blow-off valve flange. Let's see if we can get most of it. So this is what I've come up with as of now. I mean, that's pretty tight. And I've got probably about 1/4 inch of clearance everywhere. So that should be good. We may need to tuck it in a little farther because this wheel may come in to here. We still have the factory truck intake manifold, so the throttle body is actually positioned straight up. I don't want to spend the money on a 240SX intake manifold where the throttle body is coming out of the front here. I mean, if we can save the money, I can make the top hat for that intake manifold. I think I can make it work even with a hood. So we're gonna see. It'll be really tight with the hood, but we'll cross that bridge whenever we get a hood, if we ever get a hood. So what we need to do is get this pipe up and into there. It's a pretty good straight shot right there, actually. And I'll take one of these and I'll actually weld it directly onto the top hat, just like Yoshi. But this gets welded on, and then we'll just segment a piece in between, and then that's good to go. We'll put the blow-off valve somewhere right here. I mean, that's all it is, really. It's pretty straightforward stuff. Alright, so there you go. That's how you install Cage Kit's S13 front end kit. It was a little easier for me since the front end was already cut off. It took about 3.5 hours for me to get the whole thing mounted and fit properly. It takes a little bit of adjustment. We got the intercooler mounted. We got the intercooler piping kind of mocked up to see where we want it. Get a blow-off valve, get the coupling, make the throttle body, and then we'll put the front end on. And in that same video, we'll get the micro squirt ECU installed. I'll get it wired, and I might just use the tune from Yoshi to get it running. The only other thing we don't have to make this work is the injectors. They are factory injectors right now. I think they're like 230cc or something like that. where this is probably going to need about 700. We want a little bit of headroom on the injectors. You want to be at about 70-80% duty cycle, and you really don't want to be pushing it farther than that. If you enjoyed the video, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. It really helps out. Still not monetized, so it's just for me and you. And if you end up buying a front end kit from Cage Kits, you will not be disappointed.